The sun rose like a well-rehearsed performance over Willow Creek, casting warm light over rows of identical homes nestled among whispering trees and clean sidewalks. Lawns were clipped with military precision. Sprinklers ticked rhythmically across flower beds lined with tulips and ornamental grass. On paper, it was the kind of neighborhood people fought to move into, the kind where crime felt fictional, and no one locked their doors out of necessity, but out of habit. But the thing about perfection, it's rarely real. Inside number 47 Elmwood Drive, Daniel Garner sat at the kitchen island in his crisp navy suit, staring into his black coffee like it owed him an answer. His tie was tight, his face clean-shaven, his jaw clenched like someone perpetually bracing for impact. Across the marble countertop, Linda moved with choreographed grace, placing strawberries on pancakes in neat rows, each slice symmetrical, the way Daniel liked it. Her blonde hair was pinned into a smooth bun, her pearl earrings catching the morning light. They hadn't spoken more than 3 sentences to each other. Not since last night's argument. Not since last week's silence. Not since years ago when the love they once shared had calcified into routine. Their marriage wasn't broken, it was on autopilot. Don't forget the Andersons' dinner on Friday, Linda said without looking up. Daniel nodded. I won't. It was always like that now. Cold, efficient, hollow. Their conversations revolved around appointments, bills, neighborhood events. The intimacy had bled out slowly, unnoticed at first, like a slow leak under a floorboard, until one day there was nothing left but the structure. The house was still full. The marriage was not. Daniel glanced toward the window. Across the street, number 52 had its porch light on, and with it, a woman stood silhouetted in the glow, mug in hand, robe drawn loosely around her waist. Jennifer Johnson. He didn't know much about her, only that she'd moved in 6 months ago with her husband Mark. But what he did know was enough to unnerve him. She was magnetic, not in the cliché rom-com sense. She was something else entirely, unpredictable, vibrant, in a way that made everything around her seem dull by comparison. Where Linda was polished and calculated, Jennifer was spontaneous, untamed. She sang off-key while watering her plants. She danced barefoot in the rain. She waved at Daniel every morning like it mattered, and this morning was no different. She caught him staring, and instead of turning away, she smiled. Not a polite smile, not neighborly. It lingered, curious, a little dangerous. Daniel looked away too late. That afternoon, he lingered in his car longer than usual after pulling into the driveway. The air conditioner hummed softly and his fingers drummed the steering wheel, unwilling to step into the silence that waited inside the house. He wasn't ready to face Linda's cool eyes. Not tonight. He wasn't ready to pretend again. Instead, he crossed the street. Jennifer was in her garden, bent over a bed of lavender. Her sundress clung to her hips and her hands were dirt-stained. Her back was to him, but she didn't flinch when he spoke. Looks like it's thriving. She turned slowly. Lavender loves being ignored, kind of like some people. Daniel smiled, unsure if it was a joke. I wouldn't know. Oh, I think you would, she said, wiping her hands on her dress, eyes locked on him. You look like someone who's forgotten what thriving feels like. That was the first real conversation they had, and it felt like a fuse had been lit. A few days later, the monthly neighborhood book club met at the Garner's house. Linda played hostess like a pageant queen, flawless smiles, spotless home, chilled rosé in crystal glasses. Women gathered around the kitchen island, chatting about a thriller novel only half had read. The room buzzed with laughter, but underneath it was a current of competition, house sizes, children's grades, vacation homes. Jennifer arrived late. She wore a red silk blouse tucked into faded jeans. Her makeup was minimal, but her presence turned heads. Not because of beauty, but because she carried herself like someone who didn't care what anyone thought. And that, in a place like Willow Creek, was revolutionary. Linda's smile tightened the moment she saw her. Glad you could make it, she said coolly. I almost didn't, Jennifer replied with a shrug, but then I remembered how much I enjoy watching the claws come out. A few of the women chuckled nervously. Daniel stood in the hallway listening, watching. Later, after everyone left, Linda was in the kitchen, scrubbing wine glasses like they'd insulted her. Daniel entered quietly. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up. You like her, Linda said flatly, without looking at him. Daniel froze. Who? Don't insult me. He said nothing. Linda turned to him, eyes glinting with something fierce. I see the way you look at her. Daniel leaned against the counter. You don't see me anymore. She paused, surprised by the honesty in his voice. Then, because there's nothing left to see, the words hit like a slap. Neither of them spoke after that. Across the street, Mark Johnson kissed his wife's shoulder as she stared out the window at the house across from them. She didn't respond. Her fingers drummed the windowsill. Her eyes were fixed on the figure standing in the kitchen at number 47. Not Daniel. Linda. There was something too rehearsed about Linda's laugh. Something too familiar in the way she spoke to Mark during neighborhood barbecues. Jennifer had noticed it months ago. The way Linda touched his arm just a moment too long. The secret smiles. The chemistry. She wasn't jealous. She was curious. Very curious. Because Jennifer wasn't just impulsive. She was observant. And underneath her charm and wildness lived a calculating mind that missed nothing. Not her husband's infidelities, not Linda's secret glances, and definitely not the way Daniel watched her like a starving man. She smiled to herself. Pieces were already moving, and soon they would begin to fall. It started with glances, then silence, then an invitation that wasn't spoken, but was unmistakably understood. The days in Willow Creek began to stretch, heavy with heat and tension. Summer came early that year, or maybe it only felt hotter because of what was simmering beneath the surface. It was the kind of heat that made windows sweat and made people do things they'd later claim they never meant to do. Daniel Garner was no exception. He'd started walking his dog more often, even though the Garners didn't own a dog. He'd take long, purposeless drives around the block, only to end up parked near number 52. A grocery run would take an extra hour. His gym bag would stay in the trunk, unopened. He wasn't hiding it well anymore. Linda noticed. She noticed everything. But Linda wasn't the kind of woman who screamed or cried or begged. She played a different game. Quiet, strategic, patient. She watched, she waited, and in the meantime she played the perfect wife just a little too perfectly. Her kisses grew colder, but her smiles became sharper. And on the other side of the street, Jennifer Johnson watched all of it like a playwright admiring her cast from backstage. It was a Saturday when it happened. Daniel was in his garage pretending to rearrange tools he hadn't touched in months. Sweat glistened on his temples, not from labor, but from nerves. Jennifer appeared in the doorway like a shadow at first. Loose denim shorts, bare feet, a tank top that clung to her like a second skin. You're avoiding me, she said casually, leaning against the frame. Daniel swallowed hard, trying to keep things normal. Jennifer stepped inside. Normal is overrated. He laughed, short and bitter. Tell that to my marriage. She tilted her head. What's it like, being trapped? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the workbench and picked up a wrench, pretending it was important. She moved closer. Linda's beautiful, Jennifer said softly, but I don't think she sees you anymore. Daniel's grip tightened on the wrench. She sees what she wants to see. And what about me? She whispered. Silence. Then, you see too much, he said. Jennifer smiled. I always do. That night it happened. Not sex. Something worse. Confession? Jennifer sat on Daniel's porch while Linda was away at a charity event. She held a glass of wine and stared into the dark sky, stars barely visible above the streetlights. Daniel joined her, the air between them electric with unspoken truths. My marriage is dying, he said finally. Jennifer didn't flinch. Mine's already dead. They sat in that silence for a while, two strangers on parallel tracks that had started to curve inward, bound to collide. My husband cheats on me, she said plainly. Daniel looked over, surprised. Mark? She nodded. And I let him, because I don't care anymore, or maybe I never did. You sound detached. I am. I love watching people fall apart. It's when they're most honest. He stared at her, unsure if she was joking. She wasn't. The next morning, Linda stood in the bathroom holding Daniel's phone in her hand. His text thread with J Landscaping was locked, but not well enough. She scrolled through messages. Still thinking about last night. Do you ever wonder if they know? Sometimes I wish we could just disappear. Linda didn't scream. She didn't cry. She placed the phone back where she found it, adjusted her earrings, and walked downstairs to prepare breakfast. 2 sunny side-up eggs. Just how Daniel liked them. And just like that, the game changed. Meanwhile, Across the street, Jennifer stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her lipstick was smeared, her eyes wide, but tired. Mark was still asleep in bed, snoring heavily. His phone buzzed. She ignored it. Instead, she opened her drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, an old engagement ring, the one Mark had given her when they were still young and stupid and in love. She put it on, then smiled, then took it off again. A week later, the swap happened. It wasn't planned, not really. It started as an accidental dinner between the two couples. Linda invited them, though her voice betrayed no motive. Jennifer accepted, smiling just a little too long. Mark showed up with a bottle of wine and a joke about neighborhood politics. Daniel poured drinks with shaking hands. The evening blurred quickly. Red wine, laughter, more red wine. A game of truth or dare, played half in jest. Then came the confessions. Jennifer dared Linda to share a secret. Linda sipped her drink, eyes locked on Jennifer. Daniel cheated once, she said calmly. I forgave him. He doesn't know I know. The room froze. Jennifer blinked. Wow. Mark looked at Daniel. She's serious? Daniel stood up and walked outside. Jennifer followed him. Linda poured herself another drink. Mark just laughed. Outside, Daniel was pacing. Jennifer touched his arm. She's lying, he muttered. Jennifer leaned in. She's winning. And that night, somewhere between rage and impulse, Daniel kissed her. It didn't feel romantic. It felt inevitable. Inside the house. Mark and Linda stood in the kitchen alone. Mark raised his glass to her. You always were the dangerous one. Linda smiled, and you always underestimated me. Over the next few weeks, the boundaries dissolved. The two couples began seeing more of each other. At first it was friendly, then it was suggestive, then it was unspoken. A kind of game emerged. Flirtation, proximity, subtle touches exchanged like currency. The swap became real. Mark and Linda, Daniel and Jennifer. Then Mark and Jennifer, then Linda and Daniel. No one called it what it was, but they all knew. What began as thrill turned quickly into possession, then resentment, then obsession. Daniel fell the hardest. Jennifer was everything Linda was not. Carefree, passionate, unpredictable. She made him feel like a man again, like someone seen. But Jennifer, she was slipping away. Because Jennifer didn't fall. She lured. And Daniel, he was starting to need her. Need became dependence. Dependence became obsession. He began showing up at her door unannounced, leaving gifts, calling late, watching her through his blinds at night. Jennifer liked the power, but power is a dangerous thing to feed a man who's already losing everything. One night she told him, "This has to stop." Daniel froze. "What?" "This was fun," she said, reaching for her robe. "But it's over. You're getting too serious." He laughed, hollow. "I'm in love with you." Jennifer blinked. That's not my problem." Daniel stood, his face flushed, his hands shaking. "You said—" "I didn't say anything," she cut in. "You heard what you wanted." He stared at her like she'd slapped him. And maybe she had. Because in that moment, the man Jennifer thought she controlled. Snap! Across the street, Linda watched from the bedroom window. She couldn't hear them, but she didn't need to. She saw Daniel storm out. She saw the way Jennifer didn't follow. She closed the blinds. Then picked up her phone. She dialed a number. Not Daniel, not Jennifer, not Mark. Someone else, someone unexpected, and said one word. It's time. A cinematic psychological true crime story. Some tragedies don't begin with a scream. They begin with silence. A slow drip of something toxic into the everyday. A shift in tone. A look held too long. That's how it was in Willow Creek. By the time anyone heard the crash, the fire had already started. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This isn't about flames. It's about the spark. It had been 3 days since Jennifer told Daniel she was done. 3 days since he stopped eating. 3 days since Linda started sleeping in the guest room again. Without explanation, without a word. And 3 days since Mark Johnson began receiving anonymous notes. Short sentences, neatly typed. Your wife isn't loyal. They meet at night. Behind your back. Always behind your back. Each note arrived folded in half. No return address. Postmarked locally. At first, Mark laughed. Then he didn't. On the 4th day, Daniel showed up at Jennifer's door again. This time she didn't open it. She watched him from behind the curtain as he rang the bell. Then knocked. Then pounded. He stood outside for 12 minutes. 12 minutes of waiting, whispering her name through the wood, begging, promising he could be better. that he'd leave Linda, that they could be together, that none of it mattered except her. Jennifer stared at him, not with pity, not with fear, with cold, clinical detachment, because Daniel was no longer a man to her. He was a study, a slow burn unraveling of ego and obsession. That night, Mark confronted Jennifer. It was in the kitchen. He held one of the notes in his hand, waving it like a weapon. "Is it true?" Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" "Don't play games with me." "I don't have to," she said calmly. "You play them all on your own." He grabbed her wrist. "I asked you a question." She didn't flinch. "What would you do if I said yes?" Mark's eyes darkened. His voice dropped. "I'd bury him." She smiled. "Funny. You never cared before." Mark let go of her wrist, stormed out and slammed the door. Jennifer returned to her wine, unbothered. Across the street, Daniel sat in his garage again, staring at the same wrench he'd held weeks ago. Only now it meant something else. He didn't feel like a man anymore. He felt like a shadow of himself, something discarded, left to rot. Jennifer had taken everything. His love, his pride, his control. And now, worst of all, she was moving on. Mark had posted a photo on social media that morning, a date night picture, a wine bar, Jennifer's hand resting on his, a caption that read, "Some things are worth fighting for." Daniel stared at the photo until his phone overheated in his hand. Linda, meanwhile, was 2 steps ahead. She hadn't told Daniel she knew everything, because she wanted to watch him break, but now she was tired of waiting. So she did what she'd always known she would eventually do. She made the call. Detective Elliot Mitchell picked up on the second ring, a no-nonsense man. 30 years on the force, trained to know when something didn't smell right. Linda introduced herself politely. "I think something terrible is going to happen in Willow Creek," she said. And then she told him everything. Not the affair, the obsession, the threats, the notes to Mark handwritten by Daniel. Yes, she'd found drafts in the garage, the hidden key he'd copied to Jennifer's house. Yes, she'd seen it on his keychain, the late-night drives, the online searches. Yes, she'd checked his browser history. Detective Mitchell listened quietly, then asked only one question. "Why now?" Linda's voice didn't tremble, because I know how this ends. Jennifer received the package 2 days later. A white box, no note, no sender. Inside, a single black rose, artificial. Plastic, cold. She knew who sent it. She didn't need to ask. That night, she installed a second lock on the door. Mark, sensing the shift, grew paranoid. He started keeping a gun in the nightstand drawer, something he'd always mocked before. He installed cameras, changed the Wi-Fi passwords, started checking Jennifer's texts while she slept. He didn't trust her anymore. But he didn't want to lose her either. Jennifer noticed, and did nothing to stop it. Because letting him spiral was easier than explaining the truth. She didn't care. Not about Daniel, not about Mark, not about anyone but herself. She liked watching them fracture. It made her feel real. Daniel by now had started talking to himself. Long conversations in the garage, in the car, in the shower. He wrote pages of letters to Jennifer, none of which he mailed. He stopped showing up to work, missed calls, voicemails, fired without ceremony. Linda said nothing. She just cleared the shared calendar, deleted his birthday reminder, and went on with her life. Then, the night everything changed. It was a Thursday. Storm clouds were heavy, the sky bloated and bruised. Jennifer had gone to the store alone. Mark was working late. The neighborhood was quiet. Daniel followed her from the grocery store, not aggressively, casually, like a friend who just happened to be headed the same way. She didn't notice, or if she did, she didn't care. When she pulled into her driveway, he parked a few houses down, watched as she opened the trunk, struggled with bags, then approached her. "Need help?" She turned, slowly, eyes cold. "No." He stepped closer. "Please." Jennifer stood still. Then, with perfect calm, "If you come near me again, I'll call the police." Daniel froze. Everything inside him went quiet, then shattered. What happened next, the reports would say, took less than 3 minutes. Daniel forced his way into the house. Jennifer screamed. Neighbors later said they heard something crash, something shatter, glass, maybe furniture, maybe bones. She fought him. She hurt him. He bled, but she screamed. Only once. By the time Mark got home, the house was dark, too dark. The front door was open. He called her name. No answer. Then he stepped inside and slipped. His shoes skidded across something slick, something warm. He turned on the light. And there, in the living room, surrounded by broken wine glasses and blood, was Jennifer, eyes open, mouth slack, neck twisted, unmoving. Daniel was gone! Detective Mitchell arrived 20 minutes later. He'd been expecting something like this, just not so soon. Linda stood across the street, wrapped in a blanket. She didn't cry, she just whispered, "I told you." Mark, handcuffed to keep him from attacking the officers, sat on the porch, sobbing. And Daniel? He vanished. No phone, no car, just gone. To be continued in part 4, The Hunt. Let me know if you're ready for part 4, The Hunt, where everything spirals into chaos, secrets are exposed, and the psychological aftermath explodes into the inevitable conclusion. The storm didn't break that night. It waited. The sky hung heavy, like lungs holding a final breath, and under that breathless sky, a murderer vanished. Daniel Garner was gone. Jennifer Johnson was dead, and the silence that followed was deafening. Willow Creek was never a noisy town, but now it felt hushed, as if the trees themselves knew not to speak, as if the wind had learned shame. Detective Elliot Mitchell stood over Jennifer's body that night, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning every shattered object, the wine glass, the rug, stained deep red, the broken lock on the front door. There was no question in his mind. Daniel did this, and it wasn't a heat-of-the-moment crime. This was premeditated, calculated, inevitable. But Daniel was smart, or maybe just lucky, because when they searched his home, they found no phone, no wallet, no passport, no credit cards, not even his keys. The man had vanished like smoke. Linda didn't cry at the funeral. She stood at the back, dressed in black, hands folded in front of her. People whispered. Some blamed her, most pitied her. A few avoided eye contact altogether. Mark gave the eulogy. His voice cracked once, and only once. Jennifer was complicated, but she was real, and I loved her in ways I never fully understood. I think maybe no one ever really did. 2 weeks after the murder, a couple hiking 80 miles north of Willow Creek found a makeshift campsite, torn tent, burned out fire pit, scraps of paper, and a name scratched into a tree with a pocket knife, Jennifer. Forensics came back days later. DNA confirmed. Daniel had been there, but he wasn't now. Detective Mitchell put out a nationwide APB. Interpol was notified. Airports were alerted. The FBI stepped in quietly. But Daniel? Still gone. Back in Willow Creek, the real unraveling began. Mark started drinking. Hard. He lost his job, sold the house, vanished from social media. He was last seen living out of a motel off Route 7, drunk and muttering Jennifer's name to a cracked bathroom mirror. Some say he still visits her grave every Sunday. Alone, rain or shine. Linda moved away, changed her last name, got a desk job in another state, remarried a few years later, quietly with no ceremony, no photos, no announcements. But Detective Mitchell still calls her once a year, just to ask, "Have you heard from him?" She never has, or so she says. 5 years passed, then 6, then 10. Daniel became myth, a boogeyman for the new families in Willow Creek. They tell the story like a ghost tale. Don't stay out late, Daniel might be watching. Don't answer the door at night, he could still have the key. Children dared each other to knock on Jennifer's old house. Now abandoned, boarded up, covered in ivy and silence. Then on the 12th anniversary of Jennifer's death, something happened. Detective Mitchell, now long retired, received a package. No return address, just his name. Block letters, stamped clean. Inside, a single Polaroid. A man sitting by a lake in profile, a full beard, sunglasses, and written on the back in neat, slanted handwriting. I never meant to, but I couldn't stop. No fingerprints, no other clues, just a final whisper. From behind the curtains. Fade to black.
If you found this story gripping, subscribe for more true crime cases that reveal the dark secrets behind everyday lives. Don't forget to like the video. It helps more people find these stories. And share this with someone who loves real-life mysteries, because sometimes the truth is more shocking than fiction.